Hello again, my little guardsmen, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, I want to talk about the exciting topic of Warhammer 40k rules. Specifically, I want to talk about what I think is still the biggest problem with the Warhammer 40k 10th edition rules right now. And this could be a bit of a hot one. And I think there could be some people that agree with this and some people that disagree with it. So strap in, or if you're an Emperor's Children player, strap on, as we dive right into this thing. Attention conscripts, I am excited to announce the launch of the official second Mordian Glory channel. If you're curious, click on the link down in the description and head over to Mordian Glory Games. I upload to the channel several times a week with all sorts of fun and silly gaming content. So if you're jonesing for even more Mordian Glory content, then head on over to Mordian Glory Games and don't forget to subscribe. First things first, I want to set the tone of the video. I want to give a bit of context. I will, of course, be criticizing 40k in this video, but it's not going to be a silly, ranty, over-the-top 40k bashing video at all. Instead, we're going to be talking about what I think the problem is. I'm going to be saying where this has all come from, why I've started to think about this a little bit more, and then at the end, I want to talk about how I think it can be fixed. So with that in mind, let's dive into the video proper. I'm just going to come out and say it, guys. I think that the 40k rules are still a convoluted mess, and I think they are still ripe with gotchas and just confusion and muddy water. At the beginning of this edition, the tagline was simplified, not simple. Well, we're 18 months plus into 40k 10th edition, and I don't think anything's been simplified, and I certainly don't think anything is simple. And I think the big reason for this is that there are so many exceptions to the rule. There are so many little individual quirks and individual varieties of what should be a universal set of rules and abilities. A good example of this is retaliation fire. This is when you have had one of your units shot at, and via one mechanic or another, your unit then gets to shoot back at the enemy. Sometimes this is shoot on death. Sometimes this is, well, you've not quite died, so you get to shoot back. Sometimes you have to shoot back at the target that shot you, and sometimes you can just shoot back at whatever you want. It's not simple. It's not straightforward. There is this concept of once you've been shot at, you can retaliate, you can do something back, but there's so many different varieties of what is essentially the same mechanic. And within those varieties, there are their own variations as well. For example, you can have something like a tank commander, which can fire back on a 2+ when it dies. Or you can have things like Hellblasters, which I believe can fire back on like a 4+ or 3+. And there'll be other units which can fight on death, and sometimes they automatically fight on death, but then there'll be units which on a 4+ can fight on death. These are all essentially the same things. You have been attacked, and so you are retaliating. But every single one of these examples is different. And they're not universal even within factions. Sometimes you can have one unit in a faction that can fight on death on a 4+. Sometimes it's a stratagem where they automatically fight on death. It's just never the same. And it makes it really hard to keep track of all the little bits that happen. And this, from a player's perspective, can make it really hard to actually understand what your opponent's army does and to make informed decisions in the game. The number one reason that I have lost games or had to get into rules discussions with my opponent is because of these variations of rules. Because it's not fight on death, it's the special Space Wolf fight on death. I'm just pulling that out of my ass, but you get the point. The number one reason I've wasted time in a game is because I've had to look up a rule. And sometimes I've been right and sometimes I've been wrong. But the point is that it's something that shouldn't have happened. It should have been, my unit has fight on death. Brilliant. I know what fight on death does. My unit has retaliation fire. Brilliant. I know exactly what retaliation fire does. And I think it's important to note here that I am someone that plays 40k and tabletop games for a living. I am incredibly fortunate to be able to do that. I want to do a shout out to all the community members that make that possible, to all the patrons. But the point is that I am someone who does this for a living, and I can't keep track of everything. And I play against people who play this game a lot, or against other people that do it for a living, if I'm fortunate enough to pair into them in a tournament or do a collab with them. And they will have moments when I'll say, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And they're like, oh, I don't think it works like that. And I go, oh, no, it does. It does work like that. For example, let's use tank commanders. Okay, you've killed my tank commander. I'm going to shoot back and I'm going to go for that unit over there. And they're like, no, you have to shoot back at what killed you. No, I don't. Because mine's a special variant. And now it's like, oh, well, they would have changed their decision-making process. And that might cost them the game. Because they just didn't know that my fire on death works slightly differently to some of the other firing on death that they've come across. And if we are people that play this game a lot and we're getting caught out by this, how insane, how frustrating must it be if you're someone trying to get into this game for the first time and you've played a few practice games, you're like, okay, I now know what that rule does. And then you go into a tournament for the first time where you play someone new down at the club and you go, okay, I know what that rule does. And then it doesn't do it that way. So now you've got to remember that this mechanic does exist and you did know that mechanic, but now you've got to remember a variance of that mechanic. It's just bloated and it's confusing. And I do understand that some people are going to say, but Mordian, surely if you just look at the data sheets, then you'll know what your opponent's units can do. Well, to be fair, I actually would have agreed with that at the beginning of 10th edition. But with the GW app getting more and more paywalled, it does make it a little bit trickier to be able to know what your opponent's rules do. I remember at the beginning of 10th edition, anytime that I wasn't sure what my opponent's units did, whilst they were having their turn, I would look it up. And I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll look up, okay, I know that this Hellblast unit's going to shoot me back, or this unit gets 4 rolls to wound on objectives. Okay, that makes me able to work these things out. Now I can't do that anywhere near as easily. There are, to be fair, other tools out there like New Recruit, but they're not quite as smooth and seamless, and that's just being honest with you guys, as just being able to get the Warhammer app up, search for the unit, and find it. And of course, you've always got those weird, quirky situations where the rules are almost hidden. So I found this recently, and this is one of the reasons why I'm sort of making this video. I played a game against Death Guard, and I was trying to work out, okay, how do I beat Typhus and Poxwalkers? And so I looked at the Typhus data sheet and went, okay, I know what Typhus does. He's the main threat in this unit. I know what Typhus does, right? Okay, sweet. And then it turned out that there was an ability for Typhus that wasn't on his data sheet, and it was actually on the Poxwalker data sheet instead, and that completely caught me out. So now I'm getting caught out by rules for a model that aren't even on that model's data sheet. For those of you that are curious, it was the whole, when he does like his Plague Wind thing, if he's in a Poxwalker unit, anyone that dies from his sort of mortal wounds comes back as Poxwalkers, and that, me not knowing that, actually cost me the game, because it wasn't on Typhus's data sheet, and I looked up at his data sheet. I just didn't check the Poxwalker data sheet. Maybe I should have checked it, but when I'm in a tournament and we're on the clock, I don't always have the luxury of time. So, in summary, I think the problem with 40k rules at the moment, the big problem is that they're not consistent. There are too many little variations of what should be some straightforward shared mechanics across different armies. But the big question is, how do we fix this? Well, it's pretty straightforward, and the answer is already partly there in 40k, but we need to have true universal special rules. If you're a longbeard of 40k, then you know what these are, but if 40k is the only game that you play, and you joined in 10th edition, universal special rules are a list of special rules with specific names that you can basically add onto a unit's datasheet. Think about it like in terms of keywords, okay? So if you have the grenade keyword on your datasheet, you know that you can use the grenade stratagem, and you know exactly what that grenade stratagem does, because it doesn't matter whether it's an orc throwing grenades at you or whether it's a guardsman throwing grenades at you. The keyword links to a specific stratagem, a specific rule. Well, essentially, you take that concept and you scale it up to include, well, a lot of datasheet abilities, if not all of them. For example, don't have 2 units with the same essential ability, but with 2 different names. For example, you've got like the Chaos Legionnaires. They can get full rerolls when on objectives, right? And then you've got Tempestus Scions, which could also get full rerolls when clearing things on objectives. Rather than having those as 2 different rules, just have keyword sweep and clear. And then it affects both units exactly the same way. Rather than having Hellblasters with their fight on death ability and tank commanders with death befitting an officer, no. They just have keyword, or they have this list of universal special rules on their datasheet, and this one would be shoot on death. And maybe there's a close combat one, you would call it fight on death. And in a crazy sort of way, I'm not actually saying get rid of all the different variants. I don't mind if you've got a unit that can get 4 rolls to wound against units on an objective, but it's in melee. And then you've got another unit which gets 4 rolls to wound against the enemy unit on objectives, but it's in shooting. That's fine. Just give them a universal special rule each. Maybe one is close quarters specialist. They're the ones that get it in melee. Maybe one's called sweep and clear. That's the one where you get it if you're doing it in shooting. There could be a whole list of universal special rules, and they can all have their different names for different variances, but it means that rather than having to read the full datasheet and understand that this one, reading this whole paragraph of stuff, does this way in this unique manner, I can just look at it and go, that's sweep and clear, so that's going to be clearing me from range. That one's close quarter specialist. I know they're going to be having to get the 4 rerolls, but they have to get to me in melee. It would allow you to have all the different variances that you want, all the different varieties, but you know exactly what each variety does at a glance because you know what the universal special rules do. I mean, ideally, we could simple it a little bit. Maybe you don't have variances for melee and shooting. Maybe it's just on objectives. I don't know. But I think that we absolutely need to get rid of this wordy, small variances on individual data sheets. And I think we need to just get them down into a universal set of special rules. Now, whenever the argument of universal special rule comes out, there are a bunch of counter arguments that tend to surface. And one of the most common ones is, well, it's no simpler learning a list of universal special rules. It's better to have things like on the data sheet right there. I disagree with that. And I disagree with that based on no theory craft whatsoever, pure tabletop experience. I play other games which have universal special rules, and in fact I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Example number 1, bolt action. There's a special rule in that called Recce. Recce means that if someone targets one of your units, if that unit hasn't already moved this turn, it can reactive move, and if it gets out of line of sight, then your opponent's shots are wasted. There isn't Recce 1, there isn't special Recce, there isn't flying Recce, there isn't Recce with a stick on it, there's just Recce. And when I'm going through my list, or when my opponent's going through their list at the beginning of the game, they will say, and this is a scout car, and I will ask, has it got Recce? And if they go, yes, I know exactly what that does. There's no confusion. There's just that unit has Recce, and I know what Recce does. And then you have another game, like Old World, which has dozens of pages dedicated to universal special rules, a laundry list of universal special rules. But hatred is hatred. If I have hatred on my flagellants, or the enemy beastmen that I'm facing have got hatred, I know what hatred does. I'm getting them rerolls in combat. If I have frenzy on one of my units, my opponent knows what frenzy does. It's not a special kind of bloodthirster frenzy or a special kind of goblin fanatic frenzy. It's just, this is what frenzy does. I know what some people are going to say though. They're going to be like, but Mordian, you have to actually do more paperwork with a list of universal special rules, because You have the word frenzy, but if you're playing for the first time, you're going to have to then open your rulebook, find the page where frenzy is covered, and then read it. Whereas in 40k, I know what my ability does because it's on the datasheet right there. It just says it line by line what the Scion Stormtrooper ability is. And you know what? That might have been kind of right in 8th and 10th edition when this whole sort of having everything on the datasheet thing came around. But even GW is moving away from that now, and it's not entirely true. I mean, think about it. When it says sustained hits next to your weapon, it doesn't then say line by line what sustained hits is on your datasheet. You already have to go and look up what sustained hits are. If you've got scout moves on your datasheet, if you've got feel no pain, you still have to go and look at them. So we're already halfway there. We're already halfway back to having universal special rules. But for some reason, Games Workshop didn't go all the way. They didn't go whole hog. And I think this is where the confusion is, because sometimes the special rules are universal and sometimes they aren't. And it would just be so much better if they were just all back to being universal special. And I want to make something abundantly clear. I don't want 40k to be oversimplified. I don't mind if it has depth and complication to it. But what I want 40k to be, what I think is the biggest issue with the rules right now, is a lack of consistency. GW said they wanted to simplify, not simple. I think what GW needs to do is consistent, but not simple. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Am I just an ogre brain who can't follow and read words properly? Or do you think there's something to this? There's a lack of consistency in 40k. There's too many exceptions, and we just need to get things straightened out. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.